Good morning. It's really good to be with you guys today. I'm an author, and I'm the co-founder and director of research for the Flow Genome Project. And we study an ultimate human performance. What does it take to be your best when it matters most? What does it take for individuals, for organizations, even for institutions to level up their game like never before? And really, at the heart of my work is the question of what does it take to do the impossible? And I've written a number of books on this subject besides the work at the Flow Genome Project. In Tomorrowland, I looked at individual innovators who turned science fiction into science fact, who literally did the impossible of dreaming up Tomorrowland. In Bold, I teamed up with Peter Diamandis, who I know has spoken here on a couple of occasions, and we looked at people like Larry Page, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, entrepreneurs who had built world-changing companies in record time. In my book, Abundance, I looked at innovators who were tackling grand global challenges, things like poverty, healthcare, energy scarcity, water shortages. In other words, challenges that used to be met by government. And today, I want to talk a little bit about a different impossible challenge, maybe the most difficult impossible challenge of all, the possibility of agile government. And you don't have to think very much to think about why agile government is such an impossibility. You just need to define the term. Agility means quick, it means nimble, dexterous, acrobatic. Has anybody ever heard of an acrobatic institution? Agile government is a contradiction in terms because government is not designed to meet situations of extremely rapid change. As a matter of fact, most of our governments were designed in other centuries, sometimes in other millennia, and they were designed to meet the challenges of a very, very, very different time. That's the bad news. The good news is there are upgrades available. There are new tools, new techniques, and new technologies that let us level up the scale of our game like never before. There are physical technologies that let us perform at speed, let us perform at scale. And there are mental technologies, cognitive technologies that let us upgrade our brains so we can keep pace in an exponential world. And I'm going to talk about both. We're going to start on the physical side of the equation. If you want to understand why agile government is now a possibility, you need to understand the technology that is now available to us, technology that is now accelerating exponentially. And exponential growth is different than linear growth, right? Linear growth is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exponential growth is a doubling. 2 becomes 4, becomes 8, becomes 16. The classic example, you heard it mentioned earlier, is Moore's Law. 1965, Gordon Moore, before he founded Intel, noticed that the number of integrated circuits on a computer chip had been doubling every 18 months. He said, wow, this is amazing. I bet it lasts 5 more years, maybe 10 more years. 20 more years, 30 more years, 40 more. We're going on 60 more years. Moore's Law is the reason that the smartphone in your pocket is 1,000 times cheaper, 1,000,000 times smaller, and 1,000,000 times faster than a supercomputer from the 1970s. The really important point is it's not stopping. 9 years from today, the average $1,000 laptop is going to have the same computing power as the human brain. 25 years after that, the average $1,000 laptop is going to have the same computing power as every human brain currently on the planet. And it's not just computing. Ray Kurzweil, director of engineering at Google, discovered that once a technology becomes translatable into the ones and zeros of computer code, once it becomes an information technology, it jumps onto the back of Moore's Law and starts accelerating exponentially. The technologies that are now doing this, AI, robotics, network sensors, nanotechnology, etc., are the most potent technologies the world has ever seen. Biotechnology is a great example. Biotechnology is now accelerating so fast it is moving at 5 times the speed of Moore's Law. It is doubling in power every 4 months. And you're looking at a great example. This is Yu He. He's a professor at MIT. He is wearing the world's first bionic ankle. He's a paraplegic. Those are bionic ankles. These were invented about 5 years ago. They are so robust that soldiers are returning to combat wearing these ankles. And that was so 5 years ago. Because of Moore's Law, today, right now, 50% of the human body is replaceable by bionics. This same rate of change is affecting everybody in this room right here, right now. Everyone, because biotechnology is driving medicine so quickly, every day we are alive, we gain 5 hours of life expectancy, no exercise required. Of course, these same technologies are causing a lot of problems for government. Civilian drones, artificial intelligence, synthetic biology, genetics, genomics. These are straining our existing regulatory structures. AI and robotics make things even more difficult. Recent research out of Oxford says that over the next 20 years, we are going to lose 40% of our jobs to AI and robotics. Put this in different terms, though nobody thinks about it this way. If Facebook decides tomorrow that they want to issue passports, they're the 4th largest country on Earth, and sooner or later, something like that is going to happen. These are the difficulties for governments. The opportunities, on the other hand, are immense. And I'm only going to talk about a few, but I want to start with healthcare, and I want to talk about AI. We're familiar with AI at this point, right? We have Siri in our phones, we talk to her, we ask her questions. Imagine what happens when Siri knows everything, when you can ask Siri any question, get any answer. Of course, you don't have to imagine. If you saw the American quiz show Jeopardy a couple years ago, you know what this looks like. IBM built a supercomputer called Watson. They wanted to show how powerful it was, so they challenged the 2 winningest contestants on Jeopardy, a fact-based trivia show. And of course, as you can see from the illustration, Watson wiped the mat with them. It wasn't even a contest. Why? Watson can peruse 1 million books a second. What's interesting, though, is what happened to Watson after he was done winning on Jeopardy. They sent Watson to medical school. They loaded Watson with as much medical diagnostic information, case studies, journal articles, lab results as possible. And then they uploaded Watson into the cloud. Now we are starting to build user-friendly interfaces for that diagnostic supercomputer on the cloud. A good example is my partner Peter Diamandis' Qualcomm $10 million tricorder X Prize. The tricorder, for any Star Trek fans in the audience, was the medical scanning device that Bones used. He would wave it in front of somebody and would tell them immediately what was wrong with the person. That's what's coming. The tricorder X Prize is a $10 million prize for the first team that develops a handheld device that can diagnose illness better than a board-certified doctor. It works because of nanotechnology, because of sensors, because of networks all accelerating exponentially, because there is a diagnostic supercomputer in the cloud. The Qualcomm tricorder X Prize is down to 2 finalists. Somebody is going to win that contest in the 2nd quarter of this year. Now, this is a very big deal. In America, 45% of the time when somebody goes to the doctor gets it wrong. The 3rd leading cause of death in America is medical misdiagnosis. So for quality of healthcare that a government can deliver, for cost of healthcare that a government can deliver, this is a revolution. In parts of the world where there are not enough doctors, where there are not enough nurses, sub-Saharan Africa, where it's 1 doctor per 1 million people, this is a game changer. And it is not the only game changer available to government. 3D printing. The Chinese just 3D printed 10 single-family homes in a day for the cost of $5,000 each. Infrastructure, disaster relief. These are the jobs of government. 3D printing is a revolution. Blockchain, where it's going to converge with computing, this gives us entirely new ways to do financial services, to do banking. You want an agile government, you need to respond to the needs of your citizenry. This allows new kinds of direct democracy. The revolution I'm most interested in and I'm most excited about is the education revolution that is sitting at the confluence of AI and virtual reality. AI gives us the possibility of individually customized learning, learning that is customized for individual students, for their desires, their needs, their curiosities, and their learning styles. You couple this to VR, which is capable of producing individual learning environments that are so engaging, they're downright addictive, and they're fully distributed. You don't have to build a school anymore. You put these technologies together, and we have addictive, individually customized, completely distributed learning environments. Tom talked earlier about how people are going to be educated in the future and how much we're going to be educated. This is the reason why. Of course, there's a flip side to this. The human brain was not designed to move at this speed and to think at this scale. It was designed in a very different time for a very different environment. But here, too, there are upgrades available. And how to upgrade our brain is where I spend the bulk of my time. The Flow Genome Project, we work with everybody. We work with Fortune 100 companies like Google and Facebook. We work with special operations like the US Navy SEALs. We work with Wall Street investors. We work with professional athletes. We work with average citizens. It doesn't actually matter where we look or who we work with. Turns out in all of us, ultimate human performance, what it takes to be our best when it matters most, it has the same signature. It is a state of consciousness known to researchers as flow. You may know flow by other names. You heard Mihai Csikszentmihalyi yesterday, the godfather of flow, talk about this, but you may know flow as being in the zone, or runner's high, or being unconscious. Flow is a technical term. It is technically defined as an optimal state of consciousness, a state of consciousness where we feel our best and we perform our best. More specifically, it refers to those moments of rapt attention and total absorption. We get so focused on the task at hand that everything else disappears. Action and awareness will start to merge. Your sense of self will disappear. Time will pass strangely. It'll slow down. You'll get a freeze frame effect, or it'll speed up and 5 hours will pass by in like 5 minutes. And throughout, all aspects of performance, both mental and physical, go through the roof. Now, flow science dates back 150 years. In the 1970s, though, this man, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, really advanced it. And he made 3 discoveries that are critical, that are worth mentioning. The first he discovered is flow is ubiquitous, shows up in everyone, everywhere, provided certain initial conditions are met. The second thing he discovered is that flow is definable and it is measurable. We know that the state has 7 core characteristics that I mentioned: uninterrupted concentration, loss of self, time dilation, etc. Most importantly, he figured out that flow is the source code of happiness and well-being. The people on the planet who score off the charts for overall well-being and life satisfaction are the people with the most flow in their lives. Quality of life has to be the #1 concern for government, the quality of life of its citizens. Flow is the very thing that gives life its most quality. After Csikszentmihalyi did his work in the 70s and 80s, the next question people started to ask is, okay, so this is optimal performance. Well, how optimal? What are we talking about? Turns out pretty optimal. We now know in athletics, pretty much every gold medal or world championship that's ever been won has a flow state at its heart. Flow accounts for significant progress in the arts, major breakthroughs in science and technology. In business, McKinsey, the global consultancy, did a 10-year study. They found that top executives in flow are 5 times more productive than out of flow. 5 times more productive means 500% more productive. It means you could go to work on Monday, spend Monday in a flow state, take Tuesday through Friday off, and get as much done as your steady state peers. 2 days a week in flow, you are 1,000% more productive than the competition. We also know this works at the level of government. Keith Sawyer, University of North Carolina psychologist, discovered there are 2 kinds of flow. There's individual flow, happens when an individual gets into a zone, and there's group flow. This is a team performing at their top level. He did a study of 300 professionals, including professionals in a government agency. He found that the top performers were always the ones who got into flow. John Hagel at Deloitte Consulting did the same thing, did a global study of high-performing teams. The organizations and individuals who went the farthest, the fastest, were always the ones tapping into flow. The other thing that we have discovered over the past 10 to 15 years is where these states of consciousness are coming from. Neuroscience has become an information technology. It is accelerating along the same lines as Moore's Law. This has allowed us to peer under the hood and figure out where flow is coming from. I'm not going to get bogged down in the neuroscience, but one thing I want to tell you is neurochemicals. 5 of the most potent performance-enhancing neurochemicals the brain can produce all show up in flow. These improve physical performance for sure. They include muscle reaction times. They deaden pain, so strength goes up. More importantly, they improve cognitive performance. If you want to talk about why flow allows us to achieve the impossible, you have to understand how these neurochemicals impact all 3 sides of the so-called high-performance triangle: motivation, learning, creativity. Motivation. All 5 of these chemicals that show up in flow are also pleasure chemicals. In fact, they're the 5 most potent pleasure drugs the brain can produce, and flow appears to be the only time we get all 5 at once. Why did McKinsey find that top executives were 500% more productive in flow? Because of the enormous boost in motivation that you get from these neurochemicals. And it's not just motivation. Also creativity. If we are going to keep pace in an exponential world, creative problem solving is a fundamental, it is a must, and it turns out we're very, very bad at it. We can't train people to be more creative very easily. Flow does this automatically. The neurochemicals that show up in flow surround the creative process. Whatever else you want to say about creativity, it is always recombinatory. It is the product of new information coming into our brain, bumping into old ideas to produce something startlingly new. Flow surrounds this process. It boosts all aspects of information processing. When we are in the zone, we take in more information per second. Salience goes up, so we pay more attention to that information. Pattern recognition increases, so we can find links between that incoming information and older ideas. Lateral thinking goes up, which is our ability to make far-flung connections between ideas, to reach aha insights, major breakthroughs. Learning is the other thing. If you want to keep pace in an environment of rapid change, learning to learn faster is key. Accelerated learning is a fundamental. Quick shorthand for how learning works in the brain. The more neurochemicals that show up during an experience, the better chance that experience has of moving from short-term holding into long-term storage. Flow is a huge neurochemical dump, which is why in studies run by the US military, we see learning spike 470% in flow. To put this in different terms, we've all heard about Malcolm Gladwell's fabled 10,000 hours to mastery. The research consistently shows that flow can cut this in half. The better news is that flow is hackable. This is a lot of work that my organization, the Flow Genome Project, has been involved in. We've been able to take all this neuroscience and work backwards to where the state is coming from. What we've learned is that flow states have triggers. These are preconditions that lead to more flow. There are 20 triggers in all. There are 10 individual triggers, drive individuals into flow, and then there are 10 group triggers that drive groups into flow. I'm not going to go into much detail, but one thing you need to know is that flow follows focus. It can only happen when all of our attention is focused in the right here, right now. So that's what these triggers do. They drive our attention into the present moment. I want to give you one example. I want to talk about the most important of flow's triggers. It's what's often called the golden rule of flow. This idea is, it's called the challenge, skills, balance. The idea here is really simple. Flow follows focus, and we pay the most attention to the task at hand when the challenge of the task at hand slightly exceeds our skill set. So you want to stretch. You are stepping outside your comfort zone, but you don't want to snap. If I was to talk about this emotionally, I would say that flow sits not on, but near the midpoint between boredom and anxiety. Boredom, not enough stimulation, I'm not paying any attention. Anxiety, whoa, way too much stimulation, I'm paying too much attention. In between is the flow channel. This is the sweet spot. What does that look like organizationally? How do we apply this in our organizations and our governments? Toyota did a fantastic job with Kaizen. Toyota has based a lot of their philosophy around flow. Kaizen is the idea that everybody in Toyota's organization is responsible for innovation. They have open-sourced innovation to their entire organization. Everybody there should contribute. Why is this so good? One of the reasons is it allows everybody to stay in their sweet spot, in that challenge skills zone. They can challenge themselves as much as they need without pushing themselves too far. As a result, Toyota, a company that has the size that's as big as a government, is one of the most agile companies in the world as a result. The other thing I want to tell you is this is not hard. Last year, we teamed up with Google for a joint learning project. We spent 6 weeks there. We trained a team of engineers up in 4 high-performance basics and the use of 4 flow triggers. After 6 weeks worth of work, we saw a 35 to 80% increase in flow. Now, McKinsey figured out that a 15% increase in flow in the workplace would double overall workplace performance. In 6 weeks, we got a 35 to 80% increase in flow. And I think all of this information puts a wonderful and yet terrible burden on each of us as individuals, on our organizations, on our governments. The tools and techniques and technologies I've been talking about today allow us to upgrade our game like never before. So what in your life seems impossible, right? What grand challenges are you aching to solve? What kind of challenges would you go after if you could be 500% more productive, if you could be 500% more creative, if you could double learning times? This is what is available to each and every one of us today, but what we do with this information, it's entirely up to you. But thanks for listening.